We are the champions. We are the champions.
Sekusele kancane sizophumelela. Yo yo yo. Sekusele kancane. Sekusele kancane sizophumelela. Yo yo yo. Sekusele kancane. Sekusele kancane sizophumelela.
Orlando Pirates, the Buccaneers, ezimnyama ngenkani, ezikamagebhula, ezagebhula umhlaba kamasipala, zawujikisa, zawuthi 360 degrees, turn around, zawubhekisa phezulu. This team, bafethu, it means a lot to some of us. It's our bread and butter, is what we live for. We don't see our lives being complete without this team called Orlando Pirates. It was beautiful. Beautiful to see this club lifting the MTN Cup Final 2025 for the fourth consecutive times. And I've said this before in this channel, Uguti, they must really rename this cup and call it MTN8, Orlando Pirates Cup, because we own this thing. What was most beautiful was the fact that I was there to witness, what happened in this final. And again, Buffett, welcome to the BigDaddy Football Corner. For those that have subscribed, thank you. For those that have not subscribed, please subscribe, and subscribe. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize for uploading this video very late. It's because we traveled from Joburg to Mbombela Stadium. We left Joburg around 11 o'clock. Arrived at the stadium around 3. We started sitting down, around 13 past to be precise, 13 past 3 hours before the match started. And already in the center line, it was full. And it tells you about, how we as fans have changed. And we're arriving the stadium, especially in the final, going at Mbombela, where we know with this park and ride, I didn't know whether it's going to work, but we did not want to take the chance. And we arrived very, very early. It was a beautiful atmosphere. And nobody can come here and say there were this fans and that fans. Orlando Pirates packed that stadium on their own. It was another atmosphere, ladies and gentlemen. Even before the match started, already the stadium was full. In normal instances, you find that the stadium will be full around the 30th minute. So it was a beautiful atmosphere, the singing, the dancing. I also took my two boys, because in my house, if you don't support Orlando Pirates, you might as well find your own space where you're going to actually stay. So basically, I did not even happen to watch because I overslept. The alarm, I didn't set it up. I didn't rewatch the match. So I'm literally doing this post-match tactical analysis of this MTN Cup Final 2025 between Orlando Pirates and Stellenbosch FC without having rewatched the match. It's a recollection of what I saw, and then I went and I looked at the highlights, as well, just to ensure that whatever that I saw, close in the gaps and validate some of the things that I saw. So first of all, let's jump into it, but there's a lot. I hope this video is not long. The lineup, it was without Tito. I still haven't found out as to what's the reason for Tito not being in that particular match. And then the other thing as well was Mbule, Mbata and Nduli starting, for the first time. I think people have said a lot of times on all social networks how they would love to see that combination. This was a game to see that combination, Apolis, Moremi, Mabasa starting on the bench, the captain Usibisi coming back, in the bench and coming in, later on in the game to lock that particular game. And then on the Stellies, for me, it was a surprise to see Kiba not starting. seeing Umtian and Palace starting. I anticipated that they were going to start with Ukiba. They also changed their structure from a 4-1-4-1 and they changed into a 4-2-3-1 in this particular game where Palace Nomtiane were the double pivot. And De Jong again was used differently for this particular match. He was used more as a 10 and Mojela was used more as a 9. And you could see that De Jong's role in this particular match, changed. He was he was being used more to drift into the side, to create this overload, especially in the left-hand side of their attack. That's the side that they use mostly, to be able to play out. And also him to get into the half space, on top of the half spaces for the early diagonal crosses, into the far post. For me, De Jong is like a glue of this team. He makes that particular team, tick. I honestly thought that Orlando Pirates in the first half, they created a lot of half chances. And I thought that this game is a game that Orlando Pirates deserved to win. Because for me, I think it was 1 or 2, half chances that Stelli's got. And Orlando Pirates had an avalanche of those half chances, especially in the first half. But the decision making in the final moment let us down. Instead of a pass, the player will take a shot, there will be a miscontrol, there will be timid shot, and there's also gonna be, poorly timed runs, from some of the players. Right? Let's go into the first half. As early as the 5th minute, there is what I called a tactical sweet spot. I spoke about this in the pre-match tactical analysis. I'm talking about the disconnect between the right back and the right centre back. And I said if the Orlando Pirates technical team, notice this thing, Orlando Pirates is gonna eat nicely. We're gonna dive deep and look at what happened in this particular match, because all the 3 goals, that Orlando Pirates scored, they literally came from what I mentioned in my pre-match tactical analysis, as well as even before the goals. I counted about 4, 5, 6 times when that setup came up, when the right back and the left back of Stellies were disconnected. Moloisane and the Nigerian guy on the Ugodswill on the right back, that disconnect. Again, my friends, let's get into this thing. I remember, guys, I told you before about Orlando Pirates playing a free roaming number 10 and the structural vulnerability that Tito brings when he plays in that 10. For me, this was Rele's best game since the beginning of the season. For me, this was a game where he got into the right areas and he got into critical zones to make a difference, and he benefited from Mbule playing as a 10, and the movement and the positioning of Mbule assisted him to get into those positions. Guys, if you didn't see the tactical advantage of playing Mbule, as a 10 and what it gives Orlando Pirates, I don't know when you'll be able to see, that advantage, right? In the 61 minute for 61 minutes that Mbule played, please tell me how many times did you see him dropping in line with the pivot to collect the ball, or even him wandering around everywhere? Guys, I'm not bashing Tito. I've said it that he's an incredible footballer, but for me, him wandering all over doesn't help the midfield structure, the triangle, midfield 3. It doesn't help the structure of Orlando Pirates when he plays, because he's always wandering all over and not sticking to the position. Guys, look how many times the Orlando Pirates centre back played diagonal balls. I think it was in the very first 2 minutes they played one diagonal. I did not see any diagonal the entire match. And the reason for that is because having Mbule playing as a 10 and not a free roaming 10, a 10 that sticks into the tip of the triangle, it really makes Orlando Pirates progression, ball circulation easy, And for me, if you don't have a 10, or if you have a 10 that is free roaming, number one, there's a loss of positional balance because there's always gaps into midfield. You can see that the guys had three central midfielders. It was always a 3v3 in midfield, and we cancelled each other. That's why for me, in the entire first half and in the entire second half, we cancelled each other in midfield because it was a 3v3. But if Tito was playing, he was going to leave that area and become a 3v2, and then we will be overpowered, which is what happened most of the time, right? There's also reduced link-up play because there's no player sitting at the tip of the triangle behind or in between the lines. There's no player who's exploiting that particular space, right? There's also defensive exposure. As I've said, that if you put another extra player, all of a sudden, you are outnumbered into that midfield. There's also the disruption of the rhythm, of the build-up rhythm and progression, when you don't have that particular player. Look how Mbole pinned the Stellis double pivot on Mtian and Palace. They hardly joined the attacking four. His presence and his movement into that zone made Urele played, right? Because him drifting into the top of the half space, it freed Urele to come behind him or come inside him and able to exploit those particular plays. How Mbule kept on receiving in between the lines, hence for me, I was critical when I saw him substituting Mbule, because for me, he was a huge difference. And when he left, it opened a gap into that midfield. And at that point, Stellis gained momentum. They attacked Orlando Pirates. For me, if I was a coach of Orlando Pirates, it's either Tito plays exactly how he played for Bafana, or for me, he sits in the bench. The other thing as well that I noticed was Orlando Pirates corner kick. They were on point. My pre-match opposition analysis, I spoke about the vulnerabilities that Stellis have in the far post. Rele, even though I would have prepared a left footer, they used Rele, as a right-footed player on the left, but the corner was not floated. It was driven to the far post, and you could see that Orlando Pirates had already done they've already done their homework, because they always had overload into the far post, to ensure that they exploit the particular area. Second half, when Mbombela was subbed in the 58th minute, I celebrated. For me, I don't think even Steve Barker noticed the damage that sub made. He was the player that caused Orlando Pirates a lot of problems. His movement of the ball, his diagonal runs that isolated both center back and the double pivot, it opened space in midfield, and the red zone, when he was on song, it was opened, and we look vulnerable into this area. At the end of the first half, for me, I felt the first half was a tactical battle between the two coaches. They tactically cancelled each other because they both wanted central progression, used triangles and overloads, and both teams, they were both using a high press -1. They were not concerned about the goalkeeper having the ball in midfield. It was a 3v3 all the time, and Mbule's presence ensured that we are not being, overpowered into midfield. But what frustrated me the most was Orlando Pirates attackers, especially in the first half. They were too stagnant for my liking. That's why the reason why the Orlando Pirates center back they win the ball most of the time was because when they looked in front of them, there was no movement being made by the front three. It was only Urele that was constantly making a couple of movements. For me, Umahopa was too flat. He looked a little bit too heavy. He looked a bit too stagnant. He wasn't as how he's used to be, in this in most of these games. I was not surprised, when he was subbed, and I felt that sub was a little bit too late in this instance. The pace, the movement, the speed of Apolis is what the doctor ordered. I was not surprised that when they got in him and Moremi, the Orlando Pirates won the particular game. Right in the second half, the sub of Mbule, it freed to Tshepang because Tshepang was in, and for a good 10 to 15 minutes, Stellis were on top of Orlando Pirates. 70th minute, I had another, sigh of relief when Barnes was substituted. And I will say this, Orlando Pirates won this particular match, in my own view, by those two subs. that Stellis did. And then the second reason why they won was the subs that Coach Wadu made, especially in the 74th minute. The first sub was Apolis coming in, Moremi coming in, and as well as Mabasa in the 74th minute. For me, the most important thing that was critical was the off-the-ball movement that Orlando Pirates needed into the front. I said in the first half that we were too stagnant. It's exactly what the doctor ordered. And I think that Orlando Pirates could have wrapped the game, in 90 minutes. Ahead, Mohoto made better decision in the final moments. Instead of passing, he will shoot. Instead of shooting, he will pass. The free kick in the last minute, I think that that free kick was actually built for a left footer. I don't know how he ended up giving to Apolis, right? And then let's check what I said in my pre-match tacticals video about the gap between the right center back and the right back. Another thing that I noticed, from Stellis is the disconnect between their right back and the right center back. They are not in sync. I've seen a lot of times, whether it is Ugodswill playing, whether it is Umakopodi, playing, but there's always space between them, and in the half space at times over, or the both of them. I think that is a weakness that I noticed, that if Orlando Pirates could find players that can operate like Apolis in that half space, that can also operate over over those two players, there is a goal that coming, into that particular area. Exactly, ladies and gentlemen. First minute of extra time, Orlando Pirates scored. Please watch how the ball was won before Apolis got on his bike and delivered the early cross, into the left-hand side. Look at the amazing counter press from Orlando Pirates to win the ball higher. It talks about what I've been saying about Coach Wadu and what he has brought to Orlando Pirates, which wasn't there against which wasn't there under Jose, that intense counter press, wanting to win the ball in the final third, then attacking. Look again at the disconnect that I talk about between the right back and the right center back, that I spoke about. Orlando Pirates goal, Orlando Pirates scored, Orlando Pirates are on the lead, Mbombela erupts. It was another thing. Guys, the way we danced, we laughed, we sang. 12 minutes, again, magic from Rele. As I said to you, that this is probably his best match this particular season. To exploit the space that was in front of him. Again, the disconnect. Right center back. Moremi exploited it. Mabasa finished it. Coach Wadu runs to the corner kick, celebrate with the players, forgot that he had, he had a sling on his right arm. Orlando Pirates are 2-0 up. We are cruising. We are singing. The atmosphere is something else. 19th minute, Apolis intercept the ball from Henry Stenik, get on his bike, did that dribble, to cut inside. Incredible run from Moremi. Where did he make the run? In between the right back and the right center back again. Received behind both of them with a sleek, deft left foot. Ball directed into the left corner. It's a wrap. Orlando Pirates are the fourth consecutive cup champion, consecutive cup champions. Ladies and gentlemen, it was beautiful. If there's anything that I've missed, but guys, tactical about this game, please let me know, because I was in the stadium excited. Sometimes I couldn't see some stuff and I just relied on the highlights in this particular match. But before I close, guys, there's a name that I want you to remember from the Stellis team, Langeli Hlepili. Oh, guys, what a diamond. Barnes, Mojela, De Jong, yes, they actually made a difference for the team. But let me tell you a story. These are the things that you only see when you get to the stadium. During Orlando Pirates award, of the cup, lifting of the cup, and also the award of when they were giving them the medals, there was one player, Langeli Hlepili, who was sitting, in front of the board and looking at from the moment the first Orlando Pirates player went to take out the medal until Orlando Pirates lifted the cup, they celebrated, took pictures. He was still standing there watching, the only Stellis player. until one of the technical members came to him and he removed him and said, go to the bench. But I just wanted to show you that the boy was looking, for me, it was like he was saying, damn, I'm coming to this team. I'm joining this team very soon. If for me, Orlando Pirates, next season, I will invest my stock into this boy, more than his technical ability, which is crisp, his 1v1 efficiency. Last season, he was amongst the top in terms of the most successful dribbles, but for me, it is his heart, his desire to want to play regardless of the score. There was a time when Orlando Pirates were 2-0 up, they were 3-0 up. He was mad when his teammates were making a negative pass because he wanted to attack Orlando Pirates, and he gave Orlando Pirates a lot of trouble, a really lot of trouble. Guys, don't forget this name. This boy is going to be a superstar and is waiting to break out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this video. We are the champions. We